Hey, what's going on, everybody? Steve here, Raking Profit, coming back to you with another live show. Today we have a really good show in store. I'm here with my buddy Shane of the Brick Bucks YouTube channel. First link down below in the description. I've been learning a lot from Shane. One of my good buddies, Vinny, you guys all know Vinny, the Toy Master. He's been on my channel a bunch. He actually was the one who really wanted you and I to get together on a video. And I remember I reached out to you a couple months ago, and we just never made it happen. Primarily my fault. But Shane followed up, man, and he's on the channel today, and we're going to talk about Lego investing. And a little bit about Shane. He runs a YouTube channel, Brick Bucks. He has over 6 figures worth of Lego in his inventory that he purchased. He sells some, he holds some, and he's a Lego investor. He's also an eBay and Amazon seller, and he does invest in resell books on Amazon, which is really cool because, that's my bread and butter as well. So what's going on, Shane? Welcome. We're not too far away. You're in Jersey. I'm in Connecticut.
Yeah, man. Oh, it's good to be here. Good to be here. Longtime fan, and as you mentioned, kind of we hail from the same stuff with book selling. And, I'm glad to see kind of, you're stretching your legs in Lego investing as well. I love the fact that we're hanging out in a Lego store here on the stream.
You like that?
Yeah, excited to be here, man.
Hey, man, I'm happy to have you here. And, just as a little bit of a background, I was telling you behind the scenes, I started investing a little bit in Lego in about early mid 2021. I've always flipped Lego items for the last 8-9 years since I've been reselling, but it's always been, buy something at a thrift store for $4 or $5, flip it for 50, flip it for 80. I've also done quite a few flips from eBay to Amazon, just buying something for 70, selling it for 200, making 60, 70 bucks. But as of 2021, my good buddy Vinny, he started investing pretty heavily in Lego. And what he was doing is he was buying a lot of retired Lego sets and holding on to them. And it was amazing to see the returns on some of these things only after 6 months, 12 months. And as I started to dive a little bit deeper, I realized there was a whole community of Lego investors who were buying Lego, holding on to these things for 1 to 3 years and making 100 to 300% ROI. So that got me really, really excited. And, one of the biggest lessons I've been learning in business is it's not only how much money you make, but it's how much money you actually reinvest back into business and different things to compound. And it really, really caught my eye with Lego. So what kind of got you started with Lego? Was it the big returns? Was it, something that was nostalgic to you?
It was actually both of those things. So yeah, like just like you just mentioned, it was like those returns to me when I first saw them, it completely blew my mind. So I had a background with Lego when I was growing up and was a big fan of it. But then I kind of, I grew up, I became a teenager. I stopped building Lego, went to college and kind of forgot all about it for a while. Came to the US, as you can probably guess from my accent. I'm not from the US originally. I'm from Ireland. Came to the US about 5 years ago. And I don't know why, but one day I was just like, I want to build some Lego again. I just had this kind of urge to get back to it. Started searching for stuff to buy. And naturally, since I was a fan, a long time ago, I started looking up some of the sets that I built, way back when, and seeing some of the values kind of blew my mind a little bit. And that was the very first kind of introduction to the world of value increase on retired Lego sets and the whole idea that this stuff grows in value. And from there, then it was a rabbit hole of research. It was like, just being so blown away by the actual returns you can get on it. Now, at the same time, I was interested in stock market investing, real estate investing, and kind of all of these different things. And I was trying to get, to really build up my knowledge in those areas. And so, I kind of already had an interest in the whole concept of investing and building for your financial future, financial freedom, and even e-commerce to a smaller extent as well. And when I started kind of seeing what was possible with some of these returns, it just was a sudden, penny drop moment where I realized that you could bring all of these things together, which, your interest in investing, your interest in building an online business and, building financial security. And it all kind of just aligned right there on Lego investing. It was like something I just stumbled into based on an old hobby that I had when I was a child. So then I just started researching things and kind of, what are some of the sets going for? going back, a couple of years, maybe like 2 years, 3 years prior, and figuring out what did the sets from 2018 do? What did the sets from 2017 do? And, and that kind of thing really kind of gives you an idea of what you can expect with it. And just kind of looking back at what's possible, using eBay to check some comps and kind of, seeing some of those values, running a couple of numbers and realizing, yeah, this thing really works. And and it was all kind of, I hit the ground running from there, I think.
That's cool, man. So how long ago did you start, you said?
It was around 4 years ago when I first started.
So from 4 years ago, when you first started and you started getting your feet wet till now, you now have a 6-figure inventory stash of Lego. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And out of those 6 figures, I mean, over the last 4 years, have you held on to 100% of your sets, or do you sell a certain percentage every single year? Do you mind like going a little bit in depth in terms of what exactly you're doing so the viewers can kind of get an understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's different business models. So like the way I'll talk through the way I approach it, I don't want anyone to think that that's the way that they got to do it, because there are, there's tons of very, very successful people. As you mentioned, Steve, there's a whole community of Lego investors out there, and everyone's kind of doing their own thing in different ways. And I have friends who they hold long-term, they hold, 4 yeyears or 3 years, and they do it successfully. And they're very successful with that, and they make a lot of money doing that. For me personally, I prefer a shorter hold time. So I prefer to have kind of a more of a turnover, so that you're kind of getting out a little bit earlier, taking that money back and then reinvesting it in new inventory, and then, kind of rinse and repeat. Now, the reason I do that is because of compounding. So, if anyone out there is kind of a big investor, stock market investor or whatever, you're very familiar with the concept of compounding, where, the profit that you make in your last purchase will then make you money in the next one. So if you sell out a little bit quicker, you can take the profit back and then invest it in the next thing. And then that profit will start to make you more profit. So it starts to compound. And, tapping into compounding with Lego investing, the way to do that would be to sell, a little bit more frequently, because it really kind of happens when you are compounding really kicks in when you're buying and selling, right? When you have some turnover. So my strategy is around a year to 18 months of hold time. So around 12 to 18 months, I like to get back out of a set and kind of liquidate my position in the set, take back the money and invest it in something else. And, typically I aim for around 100% ROIs during that time. So my real goal is to try and hit 100% return on investment within about a year to 18 months. Some things will take a little longer, and then kind of, sell out, buy the next thing. And, but if you kind of do it carefully and, you plan your I guess your seasonality right and your cycles right, you could be selling out of a set right at the time when it's a good opportunity to buy the next thing. And there's kind of, that goes into the idea of retirement schedules and different things like that, because Lego has schedules that they retire on. Typically July and December every year are the best times for retirement, because they're the waves that the Lego group typically retire the most stuff. So if you try to sell, last year's stuff that has already hit 100%, and you try to sell it right at the time when the next wave of retirement is happening, and then reinvest it, you'll tap into compounding. You'll get you'll double your money with your first investment, and you'll buy right at the right time with the second investment to reduce your hold time, because you're buying right before retirement. So that's the strategy that I take. But again, other people do, they hold for longer periods and do it very successfully. And there's good benefits to that as well, right? So you lose with some of the compounding, but you gain in, I guess, more freedom and less work, because at the end of the day, if you hold it for 3 years, you can put that stuff in storage. You don't have to worry about it for 3 years, right? It's a much more passive investment in that way, versus if you want to liquidate or you want to turn over faster, this becomes a much more active reselling business. And you kind of have to be ready for what comes with that, because it's much more, there's just a lot more time investment involved, and you kind of have to have your systems a little bit more up to scratch, and you have to be ready to be an e-commerce business in that way, versus longer hold time. You can just kind of sit back, and you could go on vacation for 2.5 out of those 3 years and just let it grow.
Yeah. This is really interesting stuff. That's what I really like about the Lego investing is you buy a retired set, and that's the key. something that's going to retire, right? So you're usually aiming
Yeah.
for what, 1 to 3 months or so before it's going to retire, and you buy that.
Yeah, well, so this is another area where there's different strategies. So I can speak to mine, but again, there's other ways to think about it. So some people would buy something throughout the entire life of the set. So typically, Lego sets have a shelf life of on average around 2 years. It's shorter for certain themes, and it's longer for other themes. So you kind of need to, and I like to tell anyone who's new to this to pick a couple of themes and then learn about them. Because it'll really help you to kind of like go into this with the right knowledge and understanding. If you want to invest in brickheads, right, that's one Lego theme. They typically have shorter shelf life, less than a year even on average for brickhead sets versus, the typical Lego architecture sets or creator expert sets, which could be on average around 2 years. So, that's the first thing to understand is kind of the different shelf lives and things like that. And some people will buy throughout the duration of a set. Particularly certain sets that are harder to buy in quantities. They'll buy, for the whole duration so they can make sure they build up, enough of an inventory before it retires. Now, the downside to that is, again, it comes down to the whole time that you're going to have that set. So it's going to sit on the shelf for a little while before it even retires. And then after the retirement is when it starts to appreciate in value. So if you're going to have it sitting on the shelf, if you start buying too soon and it sits there for a year before it starts growing, it's longer hold time and it shortens your compounding. So my strategy is I do like to buy right before retirement if possible. I typically go around 6 months out. So let's say 6 months before retirement, especially in the things that are harder to get quantities of. And there's a handful of sets that are harder to get quantities of than others. There's different kind of exclusives and kind of things like that. Certain retailers will have some sets and others won't. And so I'll start a little bit earlier on certain sets. And also, the most important thing to remember with, if you do try to hinge your business around the retirement schedules, you need to be very, very good at researching, different sources about retirement information, right? Because some sets will not retire at that 2-year mark. Some will go sooner, some will go longer. And we have like the New York architecture set, for example, has been on the shelf for something like 5 years now. And, I know a lot of people who got burned by that and invested big amounts of money in that set at around the average 2-year mark when they thought, okay, this might retire next year. And we're 3 years later now, and they're still sitting on that set. So, it takes a bit of research, and, I recommend getting involved in some of the communities and kind of understanding as many of the sources of information about retirement data as possible. So you can kind of have a good idea of what is scheduled to retire from different sources. And that stuff is getting a little bit easier to see now. Used to be really hard to see because nobody ever shared that information. But now there's some sources that are pretty good that they're never going to be 100% accurate and dependable. But if you cross-reference them with some of the stuff you're seeing in the community and talking to people in the Lego store and kind of different sources, you can kind of gauge a pretty good understanding on what's going to retire, and then try to, pivot your buying around that.
Yeah, I didn't realize how hard it was to actually get sets. I invested in what I invested in was the Lego Speed Champions. Man, every time I would order, first and foremost, they were limited on Walmart and on Amazon. So I had to always put in all these orders, and then they would come damaged. Like the Lego Speed Champions, those are the soft boxes. So those things were just like destroyed. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I think they were playing soccer with them at the warehouse, and they would just ship them out. Like I posted a TikTok video, Shane, it was smushed, and it was in a perfect box. The box wasn't smushed. Like the actual shipping box was fine, but the Lego inside was crushed. And I'm like, Amazon, why would you send this out? So that's interesting to kind of hear. Like, I understand why you'd want to like invest maybe 6 months out, because it's got to be difficult to get these sets. And I was talking to a friend of mine. He was saying that towards the end of the life, sometimes Amazon's just kind of pulling old stuff off the shelf, and a lot of those are damaged as well. So, I'd hate to have my money sitting for 6 months doing nothing until it finally does retire, if it does. But I guess you kind of have to do that if you want to go deep on it.
Yeah, and different retailers have different kind of ways that they do things. So, for example, I was opening up a couple of boxes recently from Kohl's, and there were F and SKU labels from Amazon on the boxes. This was a new thing for me. I had never seen this before. So Kohl's, they partner with Amazon to do returns, right? You can bring an Amazon return to Kohl's and drop it off, and they'll, I thought that they would ship it back to Amazon from there, but maybe they're not. Maybe Kohl's are using that as inventory for their own sales. I'm not sure, right? But all I saw was F&SKU, Amazon labels on the back of products I ordered from Kohl's. So, if those are returns, you're ordering Lego sets as an investment, and you're getting someone else's returns being shipped to you. And the same thing happens at Walmart quite a lot. You could get returns, people are shipping things back. As these big box retailers make it more easy to return things, we always run the risk of getting someone else's returns. And unfortunately with Lego, there's counterfeiting problems. There's like a lot of knockoffs out there for Lego. And there's also, the minifigs are valuable. So some people will buy the set, take the minifigs out, reseal it, ship it back, and then you're going to order something and Walmart will send it to you. Right. So yes, there are these concerns that we have to deal with. It's not all easy peasy, I guess, to run this sort of business, but we can learn how to deal with these things.
So you're typically buying the items usually 6 months out or so, maybe earlier, 3 to 6 months out. You're buying the sets that you've researched that, based on your knowledge, your network, are going to be retiring, because when they retire, Amazon, Walmart, they're not going to hold it anymore. So there's a supply and demand issue, which means the values go up. You typically hold it for about a year or so because you want to get that sweet spot, that 100% ROI, which I found usually in the beginning, that first year and a half, it really pops. Up to about 3-4 years. I mean, it keeps going, but it slows down. So you're looking to really take as much of that profit as possible and put it back into the system to continue to compound and whatnot. What advice would you give to somebody who is brand new? They want to get started investing in Lego. Maybe they only have a couple $1,000s in savings. They're running their business with it, so on and so forth. Is this something that the average person should get into if you only have a couple $1,000s, or is this something you really need more money? This is more capital intensive.
No, I don't think it's like, well, it is capital intensive, but I wouldn't say someone should not do it if they don't, you don't need $10,000 to start with this. You could do it on a couple of thousand. There are different ways that you could start off with lower amounts of capital and just kind of, to get something rolling and get the snowball moving. So for example, you could start with Craigslist flips, right? You could, try and find some Lego in, your town around you, and try to buy from people around you at a low price. You could do sealed sets as an investment, or you could buy used sets to get some, to get moving and kind of build some capital up. You could start off with, if you're just exclusively looking at investing in sealed sets, just start off at a lower number and, and try to maybe within a year, see if you can double it. Right now, doubling your money, obviously, it's easier said than done. Typically within a year, like you could do it on Amazon, because Amazon prices tend to, be a little bit higher than eBay, but you could still hit great returns on eBay and just put a couple of $1,000s into some speed champion sets and see what happens. Now, what I would say is, before if you're brand new to this, what I'd like to tell anyone who's brand new to it is just to make sure you do some investigation first, and research first before you jump in. And the reason I say that is because I think it's definitely kind of helpful to focus on certain areas. It's the same as any other type of investing, like in the stocks. It's best to learn as much as you can about, whether it's a niche or a certain company before you buy the stock. Same with real estate, same with, any other asset, crypto or anything. Anything that we're putting our money into, we should try and learn a little bit about it before we do it, and maybe find, is there a niche that we can focus on, because that'll, help us to specialize and learn even more, because we're narrowing in and reducing the noise. So I always I think a good way to do that with Lego is with themes. So pick a theme or 2 or 3 themes to focus on, learn as much as you can about what has happened in the last couple of years on those themes. How has the prices changed over time on the last couple of years of sets? How does it differ between the different platforms, Amazon, eBay, Bricklink? Bricklink is a big Lego resale platform. And, compare those things, and then compare them against 1 or 2 of your other themes, and then pick one. And then, that's a good way to start with a couple of $1,000. And, and then you'll have done your due diligence, you'll have researched, you'll know what you're doing going into it. You'll feel more confident in your purchases, and then kind of hold them for around a year. And then, I do recommend, like, if you're starting out, I wouldn't really go for like a 3-year hold time, because it is good to have a little bit of practice, right? It's good to learn how the thing works. So shorter hold times when you're first starting out could be a good way to just learn the ropes, get a little bit of confidence in what you're doing. And one of the biggest problems that I find from like talking to the community is getting the support from the people around you is actually really difficult with Lego investing, because you go home and you're like, honey, I'm spending, $10,000 on Lego. I'm going to put it in the spare room. A lot of the time that's tricky, right? For people, getting that support. And the best way that I've seen anyone get around that problem and make sure that you get the buy-in of your spouse or your family members is by showing them the money, right? Just selling a little bit, showing them that it works, proving the concept. So I definitely think that, newcomers should keep that in mind as well, and aim for shorter hold times, at least in that first year, and then kind of go from there.
Awesome, man. Well, everyone watching live right now, if you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button. If you guys haven't subscribed to Shane over at BrickBucks, it's the first link down below. But make sure you guys stay tuned, because in the next 10, 15 minutes, I'm really going to go hard picking Shane's brain in terms of what sets he's going after, what he's been investing in, the different themes. We'll see how much I could pull out of him, how many secrets I could get out of him. But let me ask you, Shane, where are you liquidating your Lego? I was talking to my good buddy earlier on the phone, and, he's an eBay seller, and a lot of people who follow my channel, Shane, are really, really scared and nervous to sell on Amazon, and with good cause. Amazon's different. It's a scary place. There's more rules. There's more trust you have to have, obviously letting your inventory loose to the FBA warehouses. Do you mind sharing some input with that?
Yeah. I had the same experience on the BrickBucks YouTube channel. I have, like, my most recent video, I looked at prices on Amazon, and I probably had about 15 different comments saying, why are you talking about Amazon? We want to see eBay. Like, we want to talk about eBay. Definitely, like, more people, are kind of, they come at it from an eBay standpoint. And that makes sense, because Lego it's actually restricted on Amazon. It's one of these, the categories that you kind of have to work to get it approved to sell in. And eBay is a lot easier to get started with, right? And more people are kind of familiar with the idea of selling on eBay. And, like, eBay just has a kind of a warmer perception to it, which is, it's more of a mom and pop place to sell things, right? Versus Amazon, which is the big corporate world where these big sellers go and they have these big warehouses. And it's just a perception that people have, even if it's not entirely true. So I agree. Like, I understand that. And eBay, luckily for the topic of Lego investing, eBay is great. Like, it really does work there. Certain themes are better on Amazon than they are on eBay. So there's specific themes that I would say, if you're an eBay seller, they may not be the themes that I would chase down. Minecraft could be one of those. Now, actually, to answer your question directly, Steve, I sell on Amazon mostly, but I do sell on eBay as well. I kind of pivot mostly toward Amazon when I can.
Merchant or FBA, and Shane?
It's both. Yeah, I do certain things merchant, and there's a couple of different reasons that I would do that. So whenever I have a fear that something will get crushed, like you mentioned, but like it is a problem with Amazon's fulfillment services. They can maybe treat the sets with a little bit less care than I would.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I play football with it. So certain cases, then I would merchant fulfill it, and I would just make sure that I'm kind of packing it in the right way and different things like that. Other reasons I would merchant fulfill, obviously, is the nature of Lego investing is that, so depending on the way you structure your business, it can be quite seasonal when it comes to your selling, because Q4 can have a massive spike in demand on, these marketplaces. And so if you pivot your business around Q4, and for anyone who's not aware, Q4 is holiday season, like the last quarter of the year. We're just out of it now. And, you're coming into Q4, I'm going to do a big FBA shipment of Lego sets. I'm going to, get a lot of stuff that I think is going to hit my price targets during, November and December timeframe. I'm going to ship them into FBA right before that happens. And that's the stuff that I'm confident that they're not going to destroy, and it's going to do fine. Now I'm fine with like a $200 set going into FBA, but if it's a $400 set, little less so, right? Little less so. I'll probably merchant fulfill it. And also, if I'm not sure that the set's going to hit my price target, so if I'm coming into October, and I make a list of stuff. I'm picking this stuff out of my storage. I'm shipping it to FBA, but there's some of them that I'm not certain are going to hit that price target that I want before the end of the year. Then I'll probably hold it and merchant fulfill it, because it just gives me more control over making sure that, I can either hold it for another couple of months if I choose to without paying expensive storage fees at Amazon, or I can, decide to get let it fly. I just have more control. So I do both. I do merchant fulfilled and I do FBA primarily. Now I have done a lot of eBay as well, and eBay can work really well, and specifically for certain themes, as I mentioned, eBay can be I wouldn't say just as good, because prices are a little bit inflated on Amazon, but eBay can be fantastic as well.
A little bit. I've seen it. It's like 30 to 50% higher a lot of times on Amazon. I mean, it almost seems like, I guess if you hold for 2 to 3 years, it's not the biggest difference in the world. But if you're probably only going to hold it for a year, you probably want to go Amazon. I would assume. I mean, would you say that someone who wants to earn some good returns, 70, 80, 100% after a year, they have to do that on Amazon? Are they shooting themselves in their foot only being an eBay seller?
No, I don't. The whole time might be a little longer. The whole time might not be 12 months. We do get, some of those faster bumps in price, and a lot of that is driven by, there's a whole different, firstly, it's a whole different marketplace with different supply and different demand. The supply is on Amazon is kind of less, right? Because there is a barrier to entry, and people need to be approved to sell there. And so you're going to have, kind of more hurdles that sellers need to jump through. And the demand is obviously higher because it's Amazon, right? And it's the place where people in mid-December are going to try and get 2-day shipping on their Christmas present. So, and they're going straight to the buy box, and they're a little bit more kind of price elastic. So they're okay with, paying a little bit higher to get that kind of, faster shipping, easy returns, and kind of that trust factor, as I mentioned, with, they think that they're buying from Amazon a lot of the time. They don't even realize they're buying from a third-party seller. So we do see that bump, right? We definitely do see that bump. But eBay, I mean, even if it takes a little bit longer to shake through some of the lowball sellers and start to hit those high return on investments, it's still fantastic, right? So instead of talking about 12 months, maybe we're talking about 18 or maybe 24 months. When I first started Lego investing, I had a goal of 24 months, which is still a fantastic. Like, if you can double your money in 2 years, you show me a stock or any other investment that you're going to have that much confidence that will do that for you. I know, like maybe Tesla in the last couple of years, but or Bitcoin, but you can't have so much kind of control and confidence over those things. So even 2 years, I think, is fantastic. For getting started in this.
What would you say is like the biggest mistake that somebody could make if they're new? Like, what's the worst possible thing that you could do investing in Lego? Would it be going too deep in a set that doesn't retire? Is that like the worst possible thing that you can do? Because you're essentially just holding your money up, and obviously it's not going to go up in value because Amazon or these other retailers are selling it.
That would be one that I see quite commonly. Now, I don't think it's a massive issue, right? And that's the good thing, right? Is that, like, and I talk to a lot of people, and I do, like, I jump on calls with people in my community and stuff like that. And I see, certain people will kind of show me their inventory list, and maybe they bought some sets too early and they're going to be sitting on them for a little longer. But at the end of the day, if your biggest challenge is just that you bought something too early, all you got to do is just wait a little longer and you'll still make your money. You'll still make a profit. You won't even lose money. The bigger problem, I think, would be picking sets that, are bad investments. Some sets, not every set is going to be a great investment, and some themes are better than others. And that's kind of the biggest problem. So not doing a little bit of research and due diligence before you jump in would be the biggest problem. And, just buying kind of anything that you see on the shelves because it says Lego on the box, not the best way to start off. And so I definitely think, joining some communities and kind of paying some attention, as to what is, people are, like, some of the more seasoned people are doing, and themes and sets and different things like that would be a good starting point to avoid that challenge. Now, the other thing that came to my mind as you're asking that question about I guess mistakes that people can make is not understanding that this is an e-commerce business, right? And not understanding that it's a reselling business, because Lego investing sits right in the middle of investing and reselling, right? It's like, you are investing, because you're holding it for a time. So it's an asset that you're buying with the intention of holding it and selling it after it appreciates in value. It is an investment, but at the same time, it is a resale business, right? You're building an e-commerce resale business. You're selling on eBay and Amazon. You're dealing with customers. You're dealing with feedback and questions and everything, right? That that we talk about on these YouTube channels, right? And some people kind of see the word investing and they see the return on investments, and they're like, "Wow, that's better than the stock market." But the stock market, you can buy something and just never have to worry about any work involved with that, right? You can just buy it and leave it there. And Lego investing, you have to sell that again to make your returns. And I do see that. I talk to people who are kind of like, "Oh, well, I didn't really realize that selling is going to be this much work." Now, if you are someone who already has a resale business, or you're interested in starting a resale business, it's perfect, right? You know what you're getting in for. You understand the work that's involved with it, and that's great. And then you're not going to have this challenge. But too many people do have that challenge, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also back to what you were saying with the investing in stocks and whatnot. I mean, I always recommend people invest in index funds because, they don't move as much. They're not as risky. But when you do invest in a stock, that thing could drop 60, 80, 90%, similar to different cryptocurrencies and whatnot. But with a Lego set, have you ever seen a Lego set that retired that 3 or 4 years later was worth less than what it was retailing for at the store? Like, has that ever happened in history?
No,
Like
I've
once?
not less. No, not less. I haven't seen anything being less.
That's
I have
crazy. That
seen,
blows my mind.
yeah, it is crazy. Now, there are sets. I mean, so there are sets out there that are a little more fluffy kind of like sets, right? If you go to certain themes, like, like Lego City, right? They release a massive amount of sets every year. And, some of them are kind of like, a lot of them do very, very well, but some of them will kind of stay a little bit more flat, or because like maybe the demand is not as strong on some of them because they don't stand out amongst the crowd, right? If you have a theme that has a massive number that's coming out every year, it's hard for all of them to have sustained demand over time. So some of them might stay a little bit flat, or they might grow at a very, low rate. But in terms of, actual things actually losing money after a couple of years, I haven't. No. What I would say though is just beware of fees, right? So anyone who's kind of new to this, when you're selling your Lego sets, you're going to have Amazon fees or eBay fees. So people can lose money if they sell too soon just because of the fees. But after you hit that, break even point, when you include your fees, then the rest will be profit. So, we got to make sure that we grow in value enough to cover that at least. But other than that, I haven't seen stuff properly lose in value.
Yeah. So that's why you guys got to follow Shane's advice and do your research. We'll dive a bit more into communities to join. And of course, go follow Shane on YouTube. I actually just downloaded one of your free resources. I joined your email list, and you were sharing a bunch of retired sets. And that was really valuable. So guys, go over to his channel, download that. I think it's just first link in one of his videos. But let's do some rapid fire Q&A in the comments. And then let's come back and talk about what your worst flips have been, what your best flips have been, what you're getting into. We'll get into the meat and potatoes, some actionable things for people. So does that sound like a plan, Shane?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. So I am in the comments right now. There's a lot of comments that came through. If you guys have questions, throw them in right now and we will answer them. Primetime Treasure wants to know, Shane, how do you address the storage issue? And we'll just blaze through these because there's a lot of questions, but how do you deal with the storage issue? These sets can be big and the boxes can be easily damaged, which can impact the value with collectors. It's easy to run out of space. How do you handle this?
Yeah, I use tote bins in my system. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And we have, again, it's kind of there's preferences and kind of people do it successfully in different ways. I use a combination of very large tote bins. So these are 45-gallon, like massive tote bins. You could even put the largest Lego sets in there, and shelving. I prefer the tote bins, obviously, because they're watertight and you could seal them, and you could drop them and nothing inside would get damaged. And you can stack them quite high. So the biggest thing, obviously, with Lego storage is real estate, right? It's the cost of your storage space. And you want to use the vertical space. So just putting stuff on the ground level is not good enough. You got to go high. So stacking them becomes a must. And you can do that pretty well with sturdy tote bins. Now, they're expensive, right? So a lot of people will they won't want to invest. Like, I'm paying $20 a tote. And a lot of people are not going to want to do that. But at the end of the day, like, it's a peace of mind that you'll get. If there was a leak in your storage unit, or, if something happened, you would be able to protect your sets from it. And you'll reuse them, right? Every year when you're kind of taking the stuff out and you're selling it, you'll put the new stuff back in, you'll reuse those totes for a while. Now, if you prefer to use shelving, which a lot of people do successfully, they also kind of lift the stuff off the ground. So if there was a leak or something, it might protect them as well. One thing that I found with shelving is that I tend to move them around a little bit too much. I just tend, like, I'm squeezing another thing in, and I'm just more tempted to kind of interact with the shelf more. And so I'm kind of moving the sets around a little bit more, and there's just kind of more of a chance that you could drop something or whatnot. There is like a possibility of warehouse damages, right, as Amazon would call it, of damaging your set during like your typical operations, versus storing it away in a plastic tote bin where it's protected and kind of, and whatnot. That's how I do it typically. Now, there also, I do use boxes as well, just cardboard boxes. If I take in a big order and it's in a really sturdy kind of a box that hasn't been too beat up, and it's large, and I know I could store a lot of stuff in there, yeah, I would use it, but I would try and elevate it off the ground. Some people would wrap it. They could use pallet wrap, or, some sort of watertight wrap. That could be a good way to go as well. Now, the other thing is make sure that it's dry, obviously, your storage area, and it's not too humid, because humidity is like the killer of cardboard. The stickers inside some of these boxes as well will be, they're not going to do very well with humidity. Some people might want to get a dehumidifier for that kind of thing. And I do run one in my storage space, but I don't think it's mandatory. It depends on your circumstances. So climate control in some way becomes kind of important for your storage.
Awesome. Great tips right there. Hopefully that helped. Primetime Treasure Hunter, which, by the way, go follow Primetime, everybody. I'll be on his channel, I think tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow at 9 p.m. So we'll be talking with Rockstar Flipper. Leanne Carey left a comment. I'm curious if this is true. I can't verify it because I was grandfathered into Lego, because I've been selling Lego on Amazon for, probably like 7 years now. But Leanne Carey says, I ordered 10 items directly from the Lego website, I'm assuming, and was able to get ungated. Does this work? Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I've heard of it working. I haven't personally done it that way. So I got ungated by using distributors when there were distributors selling Lego branded products. Now it's harder to do that. And I have heard of this working. I can't confirm myself personally.
Hey, the worst thing is, you guys, if you find a set that you want to invest in, just buy it off Lego. You do need to buy at least 10 of an item. Amazon wants to see that on the invoice. When you get that invoice from Lego, go onto Amazon Seller Central, shoot them over that invoice. You can probably watch a YouTube video how to do it, and that's how you get ungated. Slim Flowley is asking, would you recommend buying EOL sets that have slightly damaged boxes but are still sealed, as long as it is below the recommended price?
Yeah, so EOL means end of life. So this is sets that are, coming into retirement. I personally would not, right? And that's my own preference, is to not buy anything that's damaged. And I know people that do it very successfully, and it's a kind of a different strategy. So you could buy damaged sets and you could get them at a great price. You could, a lot of stores are liquidating stuff when they get damaged. You could actually go in Walmart, and I've seen people do this successfully. You could go up to the counter and say, this set is damaged, can I get a discount? And that could work. Lego stores also, they liquidate stuff, and they give pretty good rebates in the form of VIP points, which you can use for Lego in the future. They give like VIP points for damaged sets and different things like that. You could get great deals on them, and then you could go and sell them on eBay in retirement as damaged items. Now, the reason I don't do it is because I'm looking for scalability in my business. I want things to be like clockwork, right? I buy 100 of this set, and then when it hits my price target, I'm just churning them out, right? Orders are coming through, and I'm just shipping them out. So whenever I have a damaged set, it has to be treated separately. It has to be listed separately. I need to take photos of the corners, and I need to put it, like, I'm going to put it on eBay because I can't sell damaged on Amazon. It's not going to fit with my personal systems, but for other people, I think it could be great. It could be a fantastic way to start off.
Yeah, as a side hobby or a side hustle. That's the greatest thing about Lego investing. You can do this on a small scale, mid-grade, or you can scale like Shane. Now, here's a question that came in from Lisa. Big shout out to Lisa, leaving a comment on YouTube asking, what is the best price range for buying to sell? And I'll go a step further and ask, usually like the smaller sets are least expensive. And then like the bigger they get, a lot of times it seems like they're more expensive. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure there's some more advanced ones and engineer ones that are probably expensive, but are there certain sets that do better, like the small Lego Speed Champions versus like the big sets? Like, how do you what's your mindset around like the different sizes and price points?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's definitely a difference when it comes to return on investment for small sets versus big sets. There's a couple of other things we need to weigh up as well, because it's not all about the return on investment. So for example, small set can triple in price a lot easier than a big set, right? Because if you're looking at the $800 Millennium Falcon, it's available right now, right? The UCS Star Wars Millennium Falcon, it costs $800. The chances of that tripling, that's a little bit kind of less likely. It can happen. And sets do get to thousands of dollars. I made a video walking through some sets that were at $3,000-$4,000 on Amazon, but it can take a couple of years. Like it can take a long time to get there, and it may never happen. So it won't triple as easy, but a $15 Speed Champion set could hit 45 on Amazon, right? It's more likely that it could triple. Now, if a set triples, obviously, after you've paid your fees, your selling fees and stuff like that, you'll more than be doubling your money. So return on investments at the very basic level are typically higher on average. Now, obviously, it's not a given. Some small sets are trash; they're not going to do very well, and some large sets will far surpass any small set. So again, it just comes down to doing your research and figuring out what the best investments are. But if you average it all out and you literally just look by price points, the smaller sets, the $15, $20 sets can reach higher multiples in a faster or shorter space of time than the more expensive sets in general. Now, I mentioned that there's kind of other things we need to consider. And one of those is, the workload. So it's kind of the same thing I mentioned with the hold time. If you have a shorter hold time, it's going to be more work. It's the exact same thing with small set versus large set, because if you have small sets, you're going to have, a lot more orders to fulfill, right? You're going to have a lot more work ahead of you versus if you were kind of more passive investor and you just wanted to kind of do a minimum amount of work, put as much money as possible to work for you, but with little work, like physical work involved, then you could buy a bunch of $200 sets and you'll have less orders to fulfill, less customers to deal with. And, that could be more in line with what you're looking for.
Gotcha. Awesome. Really appreciate that. Jason Goldsberry is asking, so you sell mostly FBA or merchant fulfilled on Amazon? So we talked a little bit about that. I know you said that you will sell merchant fulfilled and then FBA in certain situations, but what would you say if you had to divvy it up? And I'm actually really curious as well. I sell Lego on Amazon, but it always makes me nervous. For some reason, my Lego always gets stranded as well. I'm curious if yours does, but what's kind of your split in terms of merchant fulfilling versus FBAing?
It's probably 80% FBA. Yeah,
Oh,
probably
wow.
80% FBA. Yeah. Now that's a more recent change for me. And I actually I've kind of done it in a handful of different ways. So it was previously more merchant fulfilled. I've also in the past, I've used fulfillment services, to kind of fulfill for me, and they do it merchant fulfilled and, different things like that. But now my strategy is more so FBA. And I think that's kind of a combination of different things of building up kind of a little bit more trust in Amazon's handling of Lego sets, right? Because coming from books, have a kind of a book business as well, where traditionally a lot of the booksellers will kind of pivot their business around FBA until they get to a certain level and then start kind of expanding to fulfill their merchant. So I had FBA in mind for things that are sturdy, like books, right? They can get damaged, they can get returns, easy returns, stuff like that. But with Lego, I was kind of a little bit more apprehensive, and I didn't want to be shipping in my $200 Lego sets over time. And I think like the BrickBox community and kind of networking a little bit more with people who are doing a lot of FBA, I started pivoting a little bit more, and it has been pretty good. And I haven't seen many problems, in the last year of kind of going heavier FBA. So right now I'll aim for around an 80-20 split, I'd say.
Do you get a lot of your inventory stranded in Amazon FBA? Like for some reason lately, I've getting a lot of Lego sets getting stranded, and just like even like high pricing errors where they're saying I'm pricing it too high. It's like been super annoying. And we open up cases and like they just ignore you.
Yeah, those pricing errors, like we get it with books, and I haven't had it yet in Lego at all, I don't think. But I guess it might depend on when you're listing your sets. So like different people will have different strategies on when they list it, and like a lot of people would list it like a year before they expect to sell it, and they'll put it at a really high price and they'll just wait for the market to catch up. I don't do that. I kind of wait until like I'm ready to sell it and then I list it. So by the time I'm listing it, the market price is already inflated. Maybe that's helping me to get less errors or whatever. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have a Lego Elves set that I put up, and there was no FBA sellers, but after researching the Keepa charts and seeing some of the price history, I noticed that it was selling for around 370. The problem is the merchants are down at like 2 something. But I've sold plenty of sets where, I mean, I've had a 40, 50, 60% bump. I usually don't like to go with that crazy of a bump, but that might be triggering it on Amazon's end. So that's a good tip. Bravo Hearing Aid Service is asking, how long is the average time frame for a set to increase in value? I've sold some sets immediately when they were first released and were sold out in stores. So
yeah, it can vary. It can vary pretty dramatically. Set by set is going to be different. And, some sets will increase very, very quickly. And it really, when it boils down to it, it's because every Lego set is its own market, right? It's got its own supply and its own demand. Some sets are oversupplied, so there's a lot of resellers that have it listed, and it'll take time to get through that supply. And other sets have, they're undersupplied, and there's not many people that have stocked up on that set. And so the price can rise faster because, as soon as it sells out on Amazon and it's retired, then the people who want it have to go to the resellers. And if there's not enough resellers there to meet that demand, then the price will go faster. So, supply will impact it big time, but also demand will impact it big time. So the more popular sets, they'll sustain that demand even after retirement, even after the price starts to rise, because they're so popular. And demand can be driven by a lot of different things, like, collectability and scarcity. And, there's a lot of different things that go into driving that demand. But if the demand is high, then in retirement, the demand will continue to be high and the price will move up faster. So it's very much based on the set. There's no easy answer for it, but I would say, that's where some of the research comes in, and, picking your winning sets it boils down to, using a little bit of due diligence and some tools to figure out how fast you think each individual set might grow in value.
Yeah. On another note, Shane, there's always the risk when you're selling, especially used products or products even from Walmart or Target, because a lot of times Amazon won't even take those receipts as actual invoices. But there's always, I say this all the time, I buy a lot of used products, a lot of DVDs, books, different items, even new items off of eBay. And I say, I'm kind of building my business on a volcano to an extent, because if they ever wanted me to prove like chain of custody, like evidence that I bought it from a manufacturer, a lot of times I can't prove it. So I understand that at any time I could get my business shut down because I won't be able to prove it. What are your thoughts when it comes to that with Amazon and books and Lego? Feel free to disagree. But what are your thoughts on like the whole topic of like, what I said, running a business like on a volcano in a sense?
I 100% agree with it. Yeah, I definitely agree with it. We need to be ready for any eventuality. Amazon are on the side of the customer always, and not on the side of the seller. So Amazon wants to make sure that they're, providing a safe marketplace for buyers. There's counterfeiting in Lego, as I mentioned, and stuff. So they got a lot of restrictions, and it's possible that in the future they tighten that up a little bit more and they start coming down harder on sellers on there. And there's always a chance that we suddenly get shut down, right? It is Amazon. And this happened in our book business last summer, right? It's, with the restock limit changes, where we expect we can ship in a pallet of books every week, and all of a sudden we're told we can't. The big changes that you have to adjust and pivot for. It can always happen in this world when you're depending on any marketplace and to bring you customers. The only thing I can really say about like how to address it is to diversify a little bit in as many ways as you possibly can. So diversify. I diversify in sets that I buy, themes that I invest in, price points, marketplaces that I use, right? So I do have a good standing eBay account at the ready if I need it. And I do have a Walmart account set up, and I do have a Bricklink account set up that I could quickly pivot to. There's other people out there that will diversify by getting a second Amazon account. I can't really comment on that because I know it's against the rules, right? Like, well, it's not totally against the rules unless you're selling different products, but selling Lego in both, they might not like that. But there's creative ways you can get around that and build in some robustness in your business so that if one account got shut down, the other might still be okay. There's other ways you can do it. Like, you could work with another company. You could partner with someone else who has an Amazon account if you got shut down, and they could sell your stuff for you. I know people who run, fulfillment services for Lego, and the first thing I would probably do if I could no longer sell Lego is ship my stuff to them. So there's kind of a handful of different things you can do. The biggest thing is always being aware that it's a possibility, right? We don't have guarantee that forever we're going to have Amazon on our side. We always just need to be at the ready, to pivot, make slight changes. Now, the good news with Lego, and the reason I'm not worried about this that much, is that the demand is so strong on Lego in general. Like, Lego is at its peak right now in terms of popularity, and the sales numbers for the last year are the highest they've ever been. They're targeting adults now with their marketing, and they're knocking it out of the park right now. And the demand on Lego sets is so high that if Amazon pulled the plug, right, that demand is going to go somewhere else. It's going to go to eBay, or it's going to go, like, the demand is still going to be there. People still want their Darth Vader's helmet that retired last year, and I'm going to still have that ready to serve them, right? So I could even create a Shopify store and start running Google ads to the store. There's a lot of different ways that I would, try to pivot. But at the end of the day, I'm confident I'll be able to sell the stuff. And even if I can't reach the same return on investments that I thought I could, I'm certain that I will be able to at least get my money back. So that's kind of where where I feel like I'm kind of, I'm protected enough to not have to worry too much about it.
Yeah. And I mean, we all want, a business that's 100% secure. We all want to live a life that's 100% safe and nothing's ever going to go wrong. But I mean, there's a lot of sad truths to life and business. There's always things that could go wrong. And, I don't care what business you're in, there's always a volcano somewhere that could explode. And I think we've all seen that over the last couple of years. No, those were some great tips right there. Let's transition over into some of the good stuff, the juicy stuff. Let's talk about some of your worst flips, some of your worst investments with Lego, if you don't mind recollecting some of those nightmares. And then we'll talk about what you like moving into we're in the new year now, but what you're picking up, what you're investing in, what are some themes that people should be on the lookout for. And we'll kind of go from there. So what are some of your worst flips, man? Let's bring you back to the dark days.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like, I don't have like terrible flips that have, really bad return on investments. What I would say some of the mistakes is when I started out, it was kind of buying stuff that ended up sitting on the shelf too long. So I mentioned at the start, the New York architecture set, the New York skyline set. That's an example of one that I was like really excited about, right? And I was like, let's buy that architecture set. And there's no sign of that ever retiring. Like, it's like an evergreen Lego set. I had a handful of those that when I first started out, I kind of got really excited, and I went and bought, a handful of different sets that ended up kind of sticking around too long.
Yep.
I went kind of really heavy on the Lego Ideas ship in a bottle, right? And this was a real nice set, and I got a real good deal on it. And I was very confident that it was going to do very well. And then Lego Group recreated it, or they re-released it at the end of its life. So this set was retiring, and I was buying it. And then they announced, we're redoing this set, and it's going to be back on the shelves. This also happened with the Saturn V rocket. So both of those sets were re-released, and Lego investors who had bought them obviously had a longer time to wait now. So that happened at the end of 2019, I think was the extension, or 2020. No, the end of 2020 was when they were extended, and they just retired now in 2021. So they were extended another year. Now, that's just a longer hold time. So again, it's not like the worst problem in the world. I just had to wait another year. But they still sold for a pretty good amount. It didn't impact it as negatively as I expected it to with that re-release. That kind of thing can happen, with re-releases, but also with new versions of sets coming out. So you could have like the new White House comes out, which makes the old one drop just a little bit in price. But again, you'll probably still do okay with it. It just won't hit your targets that you were hoping for with it. So I had a couple of those. I had a couple of sets that I bought expecting them to retire, and then they got extended. I've gone kind of heavy on the Technic Porsche 911. It's a $150 set. And, I've like 10 of them, or no, I think I've about 15 of them, but they were supposed to retire at the end of 2020, and they were on some retirement lists and stuff like that. But then I don't know if they either got extended, or the retirement list that I saw, it was actually a distributor order form. So usually they're very, very trustworthy, but it could have just been wrong. And so I pivoted, or based some decision making on that, and they stuck around for a while. But again, when that retires, I'm still confident it will do well, and I still bought them at a good price. So it's money on the shelf, but it's not money lost, thankfully. So those are some of my bigger mistakes in terms of like bad flips. I would say some of it just comes down to sets not hitting my expectations. Doesn't really make them a terrible flip. Like I bought a set called the Black Widow Taskmaster Ambush, and this was a Comic-Con exclusive set. And I expected that to do really well because it was exclusive, but it actually ended up being sold online because Comic-Con was canceled in 2020. And so it kind of the supply ended up being larger than I expected. And I bought it for 40. I expected to sell it for probably 120 by now, and it's still at around 75. So I'll probably only be making 30% ROI on that if I sold it today, versus, what I typically aim for, which is 100%. So those are kind of where the mistakes land, right? It's not like the worst problem, but it's just not meeting the expectations.
Gotcha. Cool, man. Well, that's great to hear. And it's interesting how you said some of these items could be re-released, which could affect the value. I never really thought of that before, so that's good to know. Yeah. What are you focusing on right now? Like, what are you investing in? What are some things? Maybe you could even just give me some advice right now. I'm actually looking to invest in something right now, a couple $1,000s. Is it too late because it's the new year? Like, should I have done this in December?
No, it's not too late. It is getting harder right now. And the last couple of months has been interesting in Lego investing because we've had supply problems, so in the US, at least. I'm kind of not sure. I can't speak for the rest of the world, but in the US, we've had a lot of supply problems, which have caused kind of retailers to sell out of certain sets very early, even though Lego is manufactured in Mexico for the US market. And they, like, it wasn't the shipping container problem or anything like that. They still, I don't think they really forecasted the spike in demand that they were going to see because other stuff were out of stock, right? So if you have the shipping container crisis off the coast of California, a lot of other toy brands that are manufactured overseas couldn't reach the retailers' shelves in time. And if the other stuff were out of stock, then people were turning to Lego, right? So the demand for Lego, I think, was artificially increased, and that caused stuff to sell out faster. And this is just a theory. This is not based on anything that they've said. But, so it's been an interesting Q4 holiday period to buy because some of the stuff has been harder to find. But that said, you can still find them. If you just got to kind of look a little harder. And some of the stuff that retired at the end of last year, it will still trickle into stock this month. So you still have a chance to get some of them. I personally really like, especially for kind of beginners, I really like the Speed Champion sets. I think that they're a dependable theme. Like there's a good cycle. You can there's a visual cycle on the retirement schedules for Speed Champions. If you look back over a couple of years, you can kind of see that they typically follow a pattern, and they retire, at the end of every year, they retire the oldest wave. So you can kind of look at what's the oldest wave and what to expect, and you can buy those sets, and it's kind of predictable. The exception of that is last summer, because of COVID, they were delayed getting the most recent stuff launched. So they extended the life of the previous wave before that, and they went for another 6 months. But outside of that, it's very predictable. So Speed Champions is a great one. And right now you could be buying, some of the Speed Champion sets that have recently retired, and, and store those for a while. I also like, depending on if you're an Amazon seller or an eBay seller. If you're Amazon, I really like Minecraft. I think Minecraft is a buy box theme, right? It's the kind of theme that you can go up in value quickly in holiday period because, you know, granny's trying to find something for, you know, like for the grandchild, and Minecraft can on Amazon can increase in value quite fast. So a lot of investors avoid Minecraft. They don't even think about it too much, and they're kind of more focused on the fluffy or like the more kind of fun sets, like the Creator Expert, the big Star Wars UCS sets, or the modular buildings, and not looking too much at these Minecraft sets, which maybe a lot of investors don't understand much about, and they just avoid them. That's an opportunity, right? If not many people are stocking up on them from a resale perspective, then there's opportunity there. So I like Minecraft as well. Now, I just kind of talked down on the modular buildings. I don't like if you know anyone out here is watching knows about the modular buildings in Lego. They're these buildings that they're around $170 to $200 of price point. They're targeted toward adults, and it's a series of them. And every year there's a new one that comes out, and then every year they retire one of the old ones. Now, it's kind of like it's an area that like is a kind of a, you know, a love it, hate it kind of game going on with the Lego investing community, because some people will never buy them, but they can do really, really well, right? And they could be a really good starting point for someone as well. So the most recent retired modular building is called the Corner Garage. Now it's hard to find at this point. It has been hard to find all through December, but if you can find that now in January, maybe set some price alerts or stock alerts and stuff like that, that could be another good one to get. I think it's going to do quite well. Some other higher price sets are the T-Rex Rampage from the Jurassic World series. I think that's going to do really well. The Stranger Things set as well. That's another $200 set. I think that's going to do really well. And then in terms of themes as well, I also kind of really like Jurassic World overall. Jurassic World kind of some of the lower price sets are also pretty good. And some of the more recent retired Jurassic World sets could also do pretty well.
Awesome, man. Dropping a bunch of gold nuggets. Really appreciate that. What's been your best flip of all time? Is there anything that stands out where, I mean, it just went parabolic and you're like, wow, I wish I bought like 20 of those?
Yeah, you know, like the one that's top of mind right now because it's pretty recent is last year's Harry Potter Quidditch match. Is Lego Harry Potter, and it was this was an exclusive set in Target and in the Lego store, so you couldn't get it on Amazon or Walmart. And I knew, like I was certain about this set, because when you have this exclusivity and certain retailers are stocking it and others are not, you're guaranteed to have lower supply in the aftermarket because it's just like less resellers can stock up on it. But if that is exclusive to Target particularly, it's even better because Target, like resellers don't have tax exemptions in Target, and it's kind of, I don't know, like resellers don't like it as much as they like buying from Walmart or Amazon in the Lego investing world, at least from what I've seen. And I kind of had this feeling. I was just like, this is exclusive to Target. It's going to be heavily undersupplied in the aftermarket. Now, in November during Black Friday, they dropped it. It was a $40 set. It was never discounted because Target don't really typically run great sales. They kind of match Amazon and Walmart, but they don't run great sales sometimes on some of these sets. And it was never discounted. And then one time during Black Friday, it dropped to $24. So it dropped to $24 a year, just over a year ago. And this Q4, they're selling for 110. So that's, you know, so that's a incredible return on investment in a year. Now I was buying a house at the time, so I didn't have the capital to follow how well I knew that this was going to do. And I only bought 20 of them or something. I wish I bought 500 of them. Because I was buying a house and I was just short on capital. And I knew that this thing at $24 buy-in was going to fly. It's 110 now. So yeah, that's one. That's a really good example, I think, is the Harry Potter Quidditch match.
Wow. And we're kind of getting to that last segment, last part of the live show. And I'm going to transition into a couple last questions, but really, what advice would you give to somebody right now who wants to get like on the inside? They want to know like what's happening, what's coming around the corner, because it's a little intimidating sometimes, like even going on YouTube and there's like so many different channels and everyone's saying something different. Like, where are all the experts going? Like, is there a one-stop shop, or is there a place that people are going to research? Like, what advice can you give so people can kind of get a little bit of advanced notice of what's happening and like to get prepared?
Yeah. I mean, it's not that easy, right? Like it's unfortunately won't be an easy answer, right? Because there's not like a one-stop shop that's going to teach you everything you need to know. There's kind of a handful of different tools that I like to use. For anyone who is familiar with Amazon selling, Keepa, right? You've probably already know about Keepa. You might use it in your book selling business or in your online arbitrage business. Use Keepa for Lego. It's amazing. You can kind of look back, in history and see what happens when Amazon goes out of stock with prices and kind of gauge what might happen, in the future. It can tell you about supply. It can tell you about demand. That's a great tool. So it's not really like a website that's going to tell you what to expect or anything like that, but it's a great tool you can use to do your own kind of research. So Keepa for sure. In terms of, of content, obviously I, follow BrickBooks. I think it's like, I try to do some of this, right? I try to show some of the like possibilities, what's possible out there. Obviously we go a little bit deeper. We have a private Discord server and we have some bots in there. And those bots actually show retired, like sets that are going to retire soon. They show sets that are recently retired that are still in stock. We just kind of have a handful of really nifty tools in there. Another website that I think is great is called brickset.com. Now, Brickset it's just filled with ads. So, you might be frustrated when you use it, but it's also filled with really good information. So if you go on Brickset, you can search for a set number, and then you can see kind of, when, like if you look back at past sets, for example, you could see when they retired, when they were released, when they were retired, what the shelf life was, how many minifigs were in the set, how many parts are in the set, all of this different kind of information that really helps you to do a little bit of research on it. So Brickset's great, Keepa's great, and yeah, I agree though. And I wish there was an easy answer of this one place will teach you everything you need to know, but it does involve a little bit of digging. And the other thing I would say is join some of the communities, and there's a handful of them out there. You can go on Facebook and search for Lego investing communities. We have one for BrickBooks, and that will help you to kind of see what other people are doing and, ask your questions and all of that stuff.
Do you see the Lego market being affected at all by, this was actually a question by one of my friends. Do you see it being affected at all by all the different content creators and the popularity of Lego? There's a lot of people who are worried, even my channel 7-8 years ago, everybody said thrifting would die. You wouldn't be able to make money selling clothes and books because you're creating content on YouTube and you're killing the market. I get it. It's valid. People are worried. They don't want you to take food off their plate. They want to make sure that they're okay. I completely understand. Do you think there's any risk with competition and content creators and, the digital world we're living in now where you can spread information so quickly?
I don't. And I get this all the time as well. Of course, there's a lot of people in the Lego investing world who don't like what I'm doing with the BrickBooks YouTube channel. And are kind of like, why are you telling people about this? Like, this was a hidden gem for years and we were feeding our family and nobody knew about it.
Now Shane has a bodyguard.
Yeah, right. And I start talking about the fact that Lego sets are, tripling in value in a year. And, and obviously it gets a bit of interest. And some of the old guard are kind of like, why are you doing this? Yeah, I get it. I understand. But at the same time, I like to take an abundance mentality, and I like to think that there's plenty. And I like that you use the food on your plate analogy, because I also use that sometimes where I say, there's room at this table for us all to eat, right? That's the way I like to think about it. I think that there's plenty of room for everyone to be involved, because here's the thing, right? As I mentioned, Lego had their best year ever in the last year. If you look at the chart, and you could, like anyone who's watching could just quickly Google Lego sales numbers, Lego group sales numbers, you're going to be blown away by the rise in the last couple of years. If you thought Lego was popular when you were a child, like 20 years ago, it was a drop in the pond to what it is now. Like this thing is it's a hockey stick explosion of growth.
It's a penny stock exploding.
Yeah, right. And so the demand on Lego in general is incredibly high. Lego Group only keeps stuff on the shelves for 2 years or whatever. And then after that's gone, the demand has to turn to somewhere. It's very, very rare that, I've never seen there be enough supply in the aftermarket to cater to that demand. The reason the price goes up so fast is because there's nowhere near enough supply. And so as that demand continues to grow, the supply can also continue to grow, and we'll still see the same growth in price, because the supply will still not be able to meet that increased demand. Now, on top of this, layered on top of the fact that Lego demand is growing, is that e-commerce is growing exponentially as well. E-commerce, something like doubled last year. Was it doubled or 80% growth or something? because of COVID and a lot of people kind of realizing, oh, I can order things online instead of go to the store. And more people are turning to the internet now to buy their stuff. If e-commerce grows, that benefits us as online resellers as well. So you have e-commerce growing and Lego popularity growing at the same time. In my opinion, honestly, there's plenty of room for us all to eat at the table.
Yeah, whatever, man. You're killing the market. Next question.
Let me add one more thing on this, right? Is that I heard these concerns a year and a half ago when I started, BrickBucks. And in the last year, so like people would say this, like that it's getting oversaturated. There's too many people going to jump in now and it's going to get oversaturated. Prices won't rise. In the last year, my most recent video on my YouTube channel walks through some of the 2020 to 2021 growth. So the sets that retired a year ago, what are they doing now? And the returns we're seeing on these sets is incredible, right? Mm-hmm. So if the market was oversaturated with too many people getting involved, we wouldn't see that sort of return. So I haven't seen any impact whatsoever on it growing in popularity. If I ever do, I'll stop making content because it'll impact my business, right? So,
I mean, you're the one with 6 figures worth of inventory. I could almost guarantee that 99% of the people watching your channel don't have that much in Lego inventory. So if anybody would be hurt, it would be you. So that's a good point. Tamara wants to know, how many Lego sets of each category do you normally buy? And that's a really good question. I'm sure this differs based on a whole variety of factors. But what advice, I guess, would you give to Tamara or somebody who's starting? Like, how do you know how many sets that somebody like that you should invest in? Like, what are some things that you think about?
Yeah, so it varies. So there's not a very clear-cut answer in terms of, I don't try and stick to a target number per category. And I presume by category, Tamara means theme, so different themes. So in Lego architecture, I might try and buy 100, and in Lego Minecraft, I might try and buy 60. I don't really kind of see it in that way. And the reason I don't is because, some years I like the sets more in different categories. So, one year I might, like last year's Lego architecture skyline sets, I loved. I'm a huge fan because they were Dubai and San Francisco were the 2 Lego architecture skyline sets that were retiring. San Francisco is the tech hub of the world, and Dubai, is just a city full of money, right? And in my opinion, those are 2 skyline sets that will have continued and sustained demand for a long time. So I pivoted more of my business and my buying into Lego architecture because of that, right? Because I saw such potential for those 2 sets. Now, that doesn't mean that every year I'm gonna kind of buy more Lego architecture. So it does vary and depends on how much I like the sets. But broadly, I do try and kind of stick between 6 or 7 themes for probably, I want to say, around 80 to 85% of my buying. And, there's always going to be some of my inventory that is not within those themes. So, for example, I don't buy a lot of Lego City. Lego City can do well in certain cases. It's just a little harder to get right. And I don't buy a lot of it. But if I go to Walmart in July or now in January when they're doing clearance and there's stuff for 60% off, I'll buy City, right? So now I have City in my inventory. But it's not because I'm intentionally targeting Lego City. So I don't know if that makes sense, but there's a lot of my buying, I do try and pivot towards the themes that I'm most interested in. Within those themes, I can I prioritize and deprioritize according to the sets and how much I like the sets within them.
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea if you're new to diversify a bit more versus going deep, just because, anytime I start anything new, Shane, I'm very likely to make a big mistake. So if you do make a mistake, as in maybe you buy a set that doesn't retire or you didn't do your proper research, obviously you'd have, less downside. And if it does go right, you'd have less upside, but you'd kind of protect yourself, just getting started. Victor Chang said, I bought 50 sets of the Lego architecture San Francisco for 40, and now Amazon is selling for $90.
Sales done, Victor. Good job.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I'm looking forward to investing more. I'm definitely going to be following your channel a lot more. I did enjoy that video where you're going through the 2020 sets. That was really, really impactful. So hopefully everybody, who wants to do this does their research. Don't just jump in. We're not giving you financial advice in terms of exactly what to do. You have to research. You have to make sure that it's a good fit for you based on your finances. And remember, a lot of times you're buying and holding these sets. So when you buy a Lego set, you can't go out and buy food with it. You can't invest it back into your business. Like, this is money that you can't touch. It's illiquid. There's a big difference between liquid cash and, with a Lego set, you have to sell it to get your money, which is going to be a bit harder than liquidating a stock. So there's ups and downs. So do your research, follow, give BrickBucks a follow, go check out Shane's channel. And hopefully this was able to add value. If it did, smash that like button, and ask any questions. We'll definitely do our best to answer questions in the comments. But Shane, any final thoughts, any last words to the people who are sticking around?
Well, I would just say thanks for watching. The fact that you are sticking around to watch a video like this and kind of think through these concepts says a lot, about kind of your hunger to maybe build a business like this. And I definitely think that it can benefit, anyone out there who wants to take it seriously. I agree with what Steve just said about, it does need to be taken seriously. I don't want anyone to think it's a get rich quick scheme, because it's by far, it's far from being that. It does involve a little bit of work, but, with a little bit of research, a little bit of networking, focusing on some of the resources that are out there, it's very possible that anyone, can do really, really well with this stuff. So yeah, I hope you found it useful. And this has been great, Steve. I've really enjoyed being here.
Yeah, me too, man. Appreciate you. And for everyone watching, I'll be keeping you guys updated throughout the year with different sets that I purchase and buy and hold, and we'll see how things go. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate you, Shane. And check that link down in the description to give Shane a follow. Go check out his content, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Appreciate you hanging out.
Thank you.